And right now it's time for that time when we talk to our special guest. Tonight our special guest is Reid. Chris is the author of a new book called Fly By Night, the untold story of DHL and the Kiwi who helped turn it into a global giant. Be watching for all the details to win a copy. Reid, welcome to The Beat Goes On.
Kieran, thank you.
Gosh, you've had a life where the beat has gone on, haven't you?
I have.
Look at this, and it hasn't stopped yet. Now you've written a book about DHL.
That's right, yes.
You were once a young man in England.
I was.
And you were their third...
I was a lawyer working in London, playing rugby for an English rugby team, and met one of the owners of DHL playing rugby, and he talked about what he was doing, and it seemed all very fanciful to me, couriering these documents all around the world.
It was a new idea, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah. And he said, come and work for me.
He did. After about 6 months, I was looking at maybe going back to New Zealand and resuming my legal career, and so I thought a bit about it, and he arm twisted me, and I said, I don't really have anywhere to live, I've just moved out of my flat. He said, you can come and live with me, no rent, I'll pay you 25 quid a week, pay you a bit of money for your car, and I thought, why not? So away we went.
Now, for our viewers, that was the start of DHL in England, but of course in the United States it had been going for about 3 years, small company with about 50 staff. But at the time that you met your friend in England, they had 3 staff. What? You were the third, number 3?
I was a third employee in the UK, and we were just starting out. It was very small and very unknown. What really happened very soon after I started, it was almost the time of the 1970s oil boom.
Yeah.
And Dave, who got me into the company, said, look, I'm going down to Iran, and we're looking at opening an office down there because there's a bit of demand for our service with these big oil companies operating there. And so that's what he did. 6 weeks later, and I said, well, who's going to run things here? He said, I'm looking at it. You are.
Now, let's establish, what year was all this happening?
This was 1975.
1975. Now, there it is. Little old DHL in 1975. Today, you're telling me it's a company with 100,000 employees worldwide.
It is, yeah.
And these big jets on the front that have 100 of those. And
about 100, 120 planes flying all around the world.
And how many offices worldwide in every country?
Yeah, every country.
Wow.
DHL is by far the largest courier on a global scale.
What a great story to tell.
It is.
You were right there at the beginning.
And at the time, obviously, we had no idea of how big it was going to become. Yeah. But, very soon it became intoxicating. It was the company was growing so fast. We could see we were doing well. We had no business experience. We had no place to be doing what we were doing. But, we figured it out as we went along, made a few mistakes, nothing that we couldn't recover from. And the business grew enormously, really on the back of the service was so much better than what companies have been able to experience previously. For instance, we could get a document to New York on the receiver's desk the following morning. Now, prior to that, it was going by post. It would be taking 10 days, 2 weeks, etc. So it was light years in terms of the improvement and ability to communicate.
We'll go on to that. But first of all, how did you end up with DHL? At what position? You worked hard for them?
Well, I ended up, I was the regional director for Europe and the Middle East.
That's a great job.
Which was a pretty big patch.
And a good salary?
I went through quite a few passports, travelling a lot, all around the Middle East and Europe, and helping set up the business and getting us established. And but we really didn't have to do a lot of sales and marketing because customers, once they found out how good the service was, the demand and the improvement in the service we could offer from the traditional postal service, the business just grew enormously, and it was really almost containing the growth because it was growing so quickly.
So let's go back to that time. We'll concentrate on that now. At the time, 1975, everything was run by the post office. The post office, these big monolithic businesses, slow, inefficient, run by the government, socialist to the core. And you wanted to send something to New York from England, and you knew if you put it in the post, how long would it take to get to New York?
If you were lucky, 10 days, 2 weeks, sometimes it wouldn't get there at all. A lot of things went missing in the post.
So somebody spotted a hole in the marketplace.
Yeah, Larry Hillbloom, who started DHL in 1969, an American guy, he spotted the opportunity and he'd developed that opportunity, particularly between California and Asia. and that was where DHL really got started back, before I came along. And then Dave Allen, who I mentioned, I bumped into the UK. He was living in Australia at the time, working for DHL down there. DHL was tiny there, and they wanted to open in the UK, so he put his hand up and said, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So
when you took over, and somebody came to you and said, look, we want to cash this check. We need to cash it very quickly, and we need to get this check to New York. You could actually put a courier person on a plane with that check. That's how good the business got.
Absolutely. We put a person on a plane, and in the late 70s, we ended up having a passenger on the Concorde, God forbid. And it was that important to the banks to have the material there a few hours earlier that it justified the expense they had to go to pay for our service by using the Concorde. So we actually had a passenger sitting on that plane.
Wow. Now, what does DHL actually stand for?
It's the initials of the three founders.
Oh, okay.
Dolsey, Hillbloom and Lynn.
Say that slowly.
Dolsey, Hillbloom and Lynn.
And they were Californians?
They were all Americans.
Yeah.
The only one who ever really got actively involved in the business was Hillbloom, Larry Hillbloom.
Yeah.
Dolsey did a little bit of sales and marketing for the company in the early days. Lynn never really got involved with the company at all, apart from helping get it established. But Larry Hillbloom was the visionary of DHL and became very well known in America. He was a very innovative guy.
So if we look at this, the D sat back and the L sat back, and
Larry Hillbloom.
Larry, he got stuck into it. So these two guys on the outside, they would have sat back, and they had quite a big ownership, I imagine.
They would have, but over time, Larry bought them out.
Oh, he bought them out,
and then various other partners, came into the business that people that he'd handpicked to initially get the business established. And but he was the visionary, he was the ideas man, and it was his concept that really changed the way companies could communicate.
And what was Larry like?
He was an American. He looked like he'd just dropped out from university. He always, everywhere he went, he wore jeans and a t-shirt. The t-shirt was normally about 2 sizes too small. He enjoyed getting people offside by turning up to meetings looking, like he just got out of bed. But he was a very clever, very smart guy, very clever, but he enjoyed dressing down to sort of almost put people off.
Did he drive an old car, or
I think he hardly drove a car at all. He didn't have any material. He didn't look like he had any material worth to him at all. But he had it between the ears, and he was a very clever guy, and a lot of energy and forward thinking, and he was an exceptional person.
After that great experience being there right at the beginning, there was some time ago, wasn't long ago, you thought, that was great, I'm going to write a book about it. How did it lead up to that?
Well, I'd been thinking about, writing a bit of a story for quite some time, and my wife said to me, she said, you should write some of this down. The kids don't know anything about this. It happened well before, we even got together. So, cut a long story short, about 2 years ago, I wrote a personal memoir, which included a lot of what you see here. And then subsequent to that, I bumped into a couple of people who said, gee, this is, the business side of this is a good story. We should, write this up, and it needs to be told. So there it is.
Wow. And I bet they're all too busy at DHL to even write their own history, probably.
Well, apparently DHL are looking at writing some history, but it's been coming for a while. And so I think, I still know a lot of people who, connect with a lot of people I work with in the old days, and, we're all about my vintage, and, I've sent copies to a lot of those people and keep in touch with them, and, it brings back some great memories. We had a lot of fun times, and, but one interesting thing, DHL, it has a very strong Kiwi connection, because when we started off in the UK, we started growing quite quickly, and I thought we need more staff. Where are we going to find people? So I went down to New Zealand House and put a notice on the notice board saying, couriers wanted,
We need people,
and we need people, and that worked a treat. It was the best recruitment service ever. And the phone started ringing, and, people on their OE coming over from New Zealand, they were looking for flats and all the rest of it, and here's a job opportunity. Wow. And so we had a constant stream of people who were, available, and we were recruiting people, sometimes 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 a month, because the business was growing so quickly. And these guys had to have a car, so they had to buy a cheap car, and drive around London delivering, packets of documents to our customers. So.
And right from the beginning, when you started, you were number 3. You had an Austin 1300.
A smart-looking Austin 1300. Yeah. So we used our own vehicles, and we paid everyone an allowance for their own vehicles. In those days, we didn't have flash cars with big sign writing all over them, and the main reason we kept a low profile because of the issue with the postal authorities, because the post office didn't like the competition, I've got to tell you. And they claimed they had this legal monopoly for the carriage of documents and letters, and tried to make life very difficult. And in some countries,
did they have the legal right? Did they have?
Well, they did, but they had the legal right for the carriage of letters. Now, at the time, the Postal Act in the UK was came to through Parliament was 1953. No one really thought they needed to define what a letter meant.
Yes, exactly.
So. But by 1975, as far as the post office is concerned, letter meant anything that previously used to go through the mail.
Yeah.
And obviously we were saying, well, letter just means a personal letter from you to your granny. But in some countries, in Hong Kong, for instance, in France and in the UK, we had some quite testy confrontations with the post offices. And in France, for instance, they seized our material and wouldn't release it for a while. They contacted our customers and said, you shouldn't be doing this, you could be breaking the law. But
so you had all those battles. Wow.
The thing that saved us was the customers, because they loved the service. And the thought of having to go back to what they previously had, the post office, they didn't want to borrow that.
Wow.
And so the customer support was terrific, and that was really what saved us. We didn't need fancy lawyers to, take legal action against anyone, and we got lawyers involved later in the piece to help draft new legislation in various countries, but the customers loved the service, and they weren't going back to what they previously had.
And today, let's look at the world of couriers. It's massive, isn't it?
It is massive.
I mean, how many others besides DHL have come in?
Well, there are 2 or 3 other global mega couriers, a bit like DHL, and then there are all sorts of couriers, and there are couriers around here in Auckland who are just delivering, documents on an hourly basis.
Exactly.
And it's a huge
all
industry.
started by Larry.
All started by Larry Hillman. Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. So, he changed the way companies communicate with each other.
About the same size as containers on container ships compared to the way they used to load ships.
Yeah.
This is about the same size of story, isn't it?
It is, because if you look at the communication, it started with the post office, then couriers, then we get into fax communication, electronic communication, but in those days, this was the first step outside the only way known at that stage, which was postal communication. And it was a giant step because the service was light years better, which is why it grew so quickly. The demand was enormous.
Look, it sounds fascinating, and I know our viewers are saying to themselves, is Jared going to give one of these books away?
Absolutely.
I think
of course he is.
How many could we give away?
We could give a couple away.
Okay, let's give 2 books away.
Yeah.
They're going to email me, jared@thebeatgoeson.co.nz, and we have a subject line in an email, and we need a qualifying, very intelligent question, Chris. So what should it be? I've got a good question. Okay. This book is available in all good bookstores throughout New Zealand, and it has a price tag on it.
Yes, $36.99.
$36.99. Why don't we? How much is this particular book to buy in the bookstores throughout New Zealand? $36.99.
Correct.
If you can put that in the subject line, $36.99, we're going to do the big draw, and 2 lucky viewers will win this particular book.
Yeah, and before we go today, we'll autograph it, so they'll have a nice signed copy.
Could you autograph it right now?
Certainly would.
Wow.
Yeah, pleasure.
Viewers, this is what you're getting.
And I think viewers, I've got another one here somewhere.
While you're doing that, I'll talk to our viewers and say, please, always include your address, because we have to go to the extra trouble of recontacting you and sending your address. So when you do send in an email, please include your address. 2 books signed. Chris, what a fascinating talk.
Thank you very much.
So next time I want you on the show, I'm going to send a courier for you, okay?
Please.